It was such a breath of fresh air to find out from some of the bigger casting directors and talent agencies in the Southeast that were basically saying, it is very possible for you to have a career here in the Southeast. So I was like, okay, well, if it's a doable thing, let's make it happen.
Welcome to There to Here, an educational podcast where industry professionals talk nuts and bolts and how they got from there to here. On today's show, José Miguel Vásquez takes us behind the scenes acting in the Netflix miniseries The Liberator, diversity in film, and his venture into a YouTube channel with his family. If you want to keep in touch with us, you can follow our new Instagram, Collab Inc. Film. This is also the place to ask your listener questions now, Collab Inc. Film. From Collab Inc., I'm Tanya Musgrave, and today we have José Miguel Vásquez, Atlanta-based actor in the Netflix miniseries that features groundbreaking animation, The Liberator. You can also see him in The Walking Dead and Cobra Kai. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me. This is absolutely exciting. Thank you.
We're excited. Let's start with your background. How did you get from there to here?
I gave up on this dream because I became a dad pretty young, and I thought, man, the responsible thing is to just put all that aside and just do what I had to do for my family. Mm-hmm. Then the dream came back, and it came back in the shape of just sticking to college. I went to school with my 3 kids and my wife. We literally were walking University of Central Florida campus with babies and strollers and taking turns taking classes.
Mercy.
And I really thought the safest thing to do was just to get a teaching degree. But lo and behold, I ended up getting into acting right out of college because of the 2008 bubble bursting, the economic bubble burst, and there were no teaching jobs. I was able to start acting after graduating in 2008 because of this unfortunate circumstance. And I found this career that I had given up had just kind of returned to me in the shape of first commercials. In Orlando, Florida is a pretty prominent commercial industry. And then when things really started to get serious by 2009, 2010, and with doing some more theater, obviously the hubbub of, well, let me get into TV. This has always been kind of like my dream. And that led to a TV show that I filmed in South Florida called Burn Notice. But then obviously some of my friends that knew I was doing this, they had already moved to Atlanta because Atlanta was becoming this hub that it is now. And they started literally texting me like, Jose, you need to be seen for this. You need to be auditioning for that. So that led to me getting an Atlanta agent. I signed on, and within the week I had an audition for a film. I think the following week after that, I had a callback, and then I had to drive up to Atlanta during the snowpocalypse of 2014. And my wife was like, no, we're a very close-knit family. I mean, my family's going to be all over this podcast. So it's only normal that you hear, as of now, they were coming with me to this snowpocalypse callback, which by the grace of God, I got cast in. I got to work with Vince Vaughn. I was directed by Peter Billingsley. The film was Term Life. And that really opened my eyes to this world, this city that was unified in its understanding, at least it seemed so at the time, of this industry that was starting to shape its economy and its culture. And I was blown away by the way the streets were closing down, and people just kind of got it. They were annoyed, but they got it. They understood this is what needed to be done. A major film was being filmed with big stars on set and big directors and all this stuff. This is my dream come true. Absolutely dream come true. And that's really where it started. From there, we moved here, and that's essentially how I got here, really.
Oh, that's incredible.
As far as Atlanta, logistically.
Yeah, Atlanta. I mean, that was actually one of our listener questions, was how important was that move to Atlanta? Because, I mean, you're in Florida, and one of the main things that people think, acting, they think LA, obviously.
Yeah.
So why Atlanta?
That was my question when I was in Orlando, because, funny enough, having a strong family unit is so key. And it's one of the things we talk about in our YouTube channel, Faith Family Film. I remember my wife sat me down when I really was considering this, and she said, look, if you need to go to LA to do this, do it. Don't let me and the kids hold you back. We're here for you, whatever you got to do. And that was a big thing for her to say to me. And this was when we were in Orlando. We were barely finishing college yet. And I was just in no position to even have a vision of me going to Los Angeles. And to be honest, Los Angeles has always been this place that I'll go when it calls. It's never been in my instinct, because I was a daddy first and then actor second, but it's never been my instinct to pursue Los Angeles. And so it was such a breath of fresh air to find out from some of the bigger casting directors and talent agencies in the Southeast that were basically saying, it is very possible for you to have a career here in the Southeast. So I was like, okay, well, if it's a doable thing, let's make it happen. And I just found out what I needed to do. I had the meetings I needed to have with, for example, the Finn Cannons. Finn Cannons and Associates are one of the biggest casting directors in the Southeast. And they looked at me and they said, you could move to Atlanta. You don't have to. You could work out of Orlando. If you move to Atlanta, obviously it's going to be the hub and you'll have a little bit more of a direct link to certain things. But they were very adamant about don't ever feel limited by where you are. And this was back in 2011 probably. And they were just like, don't be limited by anything. We're living in a very digital age. It's changing. It's changing. Lo and behold, here we are in the COVID days, and the Southeast, we've been self-taping for the longest time. It's not anything strange or weird for us. There's always been this sense of kind of being ahead of the game. Tyler Perry set the tone during COVID with all of this of knowing how to have this like bubble to keep everybody safe so they can still make these shows. Ultimately, it was a beautiful surprise that I could come up to Georgia and make a living. I've not been to LA yet, and it's going to be exciting when I go out there because it's not the place I'm chasing.
Speak a little bit more on how Atlanta has changed over the years. I remember hearing, Atlanta's kind of the new East Coast LA. And then I also heard later, but Atlanta doesn't have the infrastructure. They're all going back to LA. Put your finger on the pulse of Atlanta for a second.
It's always seemed to me that this place just kind of finds a way to continue to offer a place for people to film, for people to work. Again, I brought up Tyler Perry. He was kind of adamant that we're going to keep working and we're going to make sure everybody's safe. But even before COVID, I realized that it's a part of the morning news. You get your weather report, you get your usual reports in the morning. Well, apparently here, it's normal for you to get road closures due to filming reports. That way you can kind of navigate traffic. So I came from Florida, where Florida is still wanting to have something like that. And because I know the void, I appreciate the plenty that we're living here. I came here in 2014 and it was already, moving full steam. Obviously with this year, 2020's just put a halt on so many things. But guess what? The moment SAG-AFTRA came through with its safety protocols and everything was in line and everybody was on the same page, it was like instantaneous. You start hearing about all these folks going back to sets and getting auditions. The amount of activity that's been going on is exponential. I mean, really? It's like we're like a Tesla car. We go to from 0 to 60 in like 2.5 seconds. It's amazing.
So The Liberator is a 4-part series released on Veterans Day, November 11. This involved a completely new technological space with Trioscope Studios. What can you tell us about your experience with the filming process?
Trioscope Studios has amazing leadership, great people at the helm. They are Atlanta-based, and they're very proud to say they're Atlanta filmmakers, but their ideas expand beyond this market, and I think it's a global thing, and it's a beautiful thing. When they brought The Liberator, this concept was so new, and yet it's so important to our history. It's so important to tell it in this way, in this kind of new format.
Yeah.
I loved it. I was blown away by how much my craftsmanship was vital to the whole thing. The way we created this story truly relies on the interaction of the actors, the believability of how immersed we are in our environment.
Were you on a set, like in an environment?
Fantastic question. Yes and no. Physically, it's just all blue. Yeah. And you wonder, okay, well, it's kind of like what you hear with all CGI. You have reference points and you know where to talk and this and that and the other. We were given very specific visual cues so that we would know this is the moment to, duck, cover, scream, yell, cry, whatever. It felt like theater, Tanya, is the best way I've been able to describe this to folks. When you go watch a show and it's like a black box theater and some of these shows that are very avant-garde, it's all black and my sofa is a black block, right? It's just a cube of my emotions or whatever. Well, it's it was more tangible than that. That's the good news. And it helped us. It helped us because they gave us just enough reference so that we wouldn't be lost in our imagination. We would all know exactly where we were standing and walking and sitting and interacting with each other. So that's why I say yes, we were on location because imagination wise, we had to be on a bridge or underneath the bridge.
Really? So you weren't actually on, because it looks like it honestly looks like you guys were filming in a field or on a bridge or what have you, and they, like these guys just went through and rotoscoped and stylized it up and put it through some kind of a filter or something like that. You know what I mean? It looked like you guys were on location.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, I think that's exactly what we want. We want you to feel like you're there. Here's the thing: when you have Jeb Stewart, the writer, and Greg Junktitis, and you have Elsie Crowley, and they're accessible, and they're giving you their passion for the story, then that blue world is not just a blue world. It's now it's this thing that's starting to come to life as we're creating it as actors. And then obviously in post-production, the magic they do, that is beyond my skill set. I don't exactly know. I don't know what they do, and I'm just blown away.
Well,
but just the trailer, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing.
Well, your director is like certainly not a stranger to visual effects.
No, he's well versed in this world.
Yeah, he's like he's been involved with anything Marvel Universe, Star Wars, like he's insane.
Those little titles, those little indie films, you've heard them.
How was it different, or was it actually the same as kind of like the blue screen, green screen?
It really did feel like we were just having to imagine being in France.
Okay.
But the camera, everything was the same. Everything was the same.
Okay.
But I do know, and I did ask prior to our podcast, because I wanted to understand, there's this thing called triosphere. And I think it's just, they have these triangle angles, and they have a certain way that they shoot so that it helps create, I don't know if it's a depth thing, but all I know is that they position us and the camera and the setting itself, and they kind of they know how to use this triosphere atmosphere to create a special environment where I think in post, or maybe right on the spot, I genuinely don't know.
Triosphere.
Yeah, that's what they use. It's the term they've kind of thrown at me, and I was like, oh yeah, triosphere. What the heck is that?
Yeah.
It's three of something. I mean, I know a little bit of Latin. That's as much as I could decipher. It's a thing, and it's extremely impressive.
I mean, is it a physical thing, or is it just how they set things up?
I think it's just a setup. I can honestly tell you, there was nothing on set, like as far as an apparatus, where I was like, what is that?
Oh, okay. Okay.
I didn't see anything like that. And I think that's kind of the wonders thing of it. I remember you look around and like, all right, this looks like a regular set. I mean,
yeah,
cool. But they clearly had some tricks up their sleeve, and I love it.
So this film, it is a fascinating World War II story about a unit, the Thunderbirds, made up of Native Americans, Mexican Americans, Dust Bowl Cowboys, and they endured a brutal 500-day trek through Nazi-occupied Europe. And your cast was fantastic to look through. You had Latino, Native American, Tlingit, British, Scottish. The range of representation was fantastic. And the director himself is Polish. So I imagine like connecting with this subject matter happened on a deeper level for many of you.
Well, when I got notice of the casting, it very specifically said we'll be filming in Poland. And I was like, what?
Oh, fantastic.
How exciting. How cool. And, you do the casting, you do the audition, you submit the tape. And then when the thing comes in that you got it, oh my gosh, I was beside myself, because I was like, okay, I'm going to Poland. And
going to Poland.
And sure enough, it worked out. We shot in Łódź for many reasons, but at least for us actors, it completely immersed us. We were in the vicinity of where so much of this happened. We were just like 2 miles away from one of the biggest ghettos, the Jewish ghetto during World War II.
Oh, wow.
We actually got to go to Auschwitz and experience what that felt like. Yeah, it's a life-altering experience. But filming there gave us, although we filmed in Blue Studio most of the time, all the time, any chance we got to go out and connect with the places where some of this stuff took place, we did it. And just being there, there's just so much history just looking at the buildings. So, it was important. It was important to have us there. I think the thing that popped for me, and I say popped because literally my soul jumped when I got the audition for this. It was an opportunity to play amongst a group of actors that would be representing a true story of inclusivity in the 1940s. What? Yeah. Hold on. And that made me dig deep into history and what was going on in those days that nobody talks about. But it's a beautiful lens to see the story of Felix Sparks and the kind of soul that the character that this man had, to see beyond the racial limitations that the culture of the day were putting on these individuals. And instead he saw their potential, he saw their spirit, he saw their passion for brotherhood and for country. It was just a wonderful gift to be asked to be a part of telling the story, which is, I mean, again, the thing that always leaves my heart just thrilled is that this is based on a real individual. He endured a lot. Felix Sparks endured a lot, but I think the loss of his brothers throughout the whole thing is something that we can only imagine. The team at Trioscope, that's one of their main passions with this project, is to display the beautiful array of colors and cultures that are brought together in this effort to bring down Nazi Germany and to unite as brothers to fight together for something greater than themselves. I remember in school I'd be learning about World War II, and I was like, man, that must have been cool to fight in, right? And now as a grown man, you consider the family effect, the effect on country. And then it hits you, a lot of these individuals, they've passed on, and all we're left with is their stories. This limited series is going to bring people to just sit around and listen to a story that needs to live on.
What I've found is that bit by bit, you will have layers and layers and layers of a bunch of these different stories involved and how people join the resistance, right? I mean, it's stories that haven't come out until literally now, like this, like the Thunderbirds. And then you start to hear more stories and how people of all different races came together to resist what was going on. And it's a beautiful thing because you don't necessarily hear about all of these little stories. So like, I don't know, I'm very excited.
It's a more positive into the human spirit. And unfortunately, we do have to see the negative to see the positive. But again, it is ultimately a story of the human spirit prevailing, just in terms of these different cultures coming together and fighting for something greater than themselves.
So you had mentioned teaching.
That all kind of started back in my Orlando days. When I started at the theater, I started teaching there. That became the thing I was kind of doing. I graduated to be a teacher, and I ended up teaching at theaters while I got to play and perform in theaters. And now all these years later, I've recently been coaching on sets. I got to coach once on The Walking Dead. I just coached and I got to play in a movie called Unarmed Divide, which is going to be on the Peachtree Film Festival. You know what it is? I get to just make sure people are living in the moment. I just try to honor the gift that I find when I'm so connected. Like right now, talking to you, I know we're on Zoom, but ultimately what needs to happen is people just genuinely connecting, and that there's no obstruction to that. A lot of what I've learned is based off Sanford Meisner. He talks in his book about how it takes 20 years to become an actor. I've been doing this for 12. I wasn't even planning on thinking of teaching people until I hit that 20-year mark. It's just been people coming up and saying, hey, listen, I know you do this. I really want to start. I need to know where to begin. And I've done that. I know how to fight for this dream. And then when it comes to craft, I kind of simplified it for you. It's just, whenever I'm on a set, I just try to make sure people are living as truthfully as they can in this imaginary circumstance that they may be living in.
So you have like Netflix film on one hand, and then in the other, you kind of like more of an independent realm, and actually a YouTube venture as well. You have your
Magellaf. That's right.
Magellaf channel. It's your family. Tell us more about that.
The channel is a thing that happened very accidentally. The kids always messed around with it. Back in Orlando, Jenny was a teacher. I was getting this thing started. They would just start filming these fun little things. Well, when we moved here, Our oldest son, who kind of knows more about the social media world, he's like, hey, he just started saying we should do reviews on the movies we watch and just post them. I was like, oh, okay, that sounds cool. And for the longest time, my wife and I, we wanted to do like a blog, and we never knew where to start. Well, leave it to the kids, man. They figured it out. We started doing these movie reviews. And then one day he's like, hey, let's do a reaction. People do this on YouTube. And I was like, reactions? Good teachers always say acting is reacting. And I was like, yeah, I can dig it. Sure, we'll do this.
Okay.
That's kind of how it kicked off. We did a reaction to Power Rangers. That was just fun. But I think the kicker was when we did a reaction to one of the Avengers movies, and the response was insane. I mean, I think we had like 50,000 views overnight. It was something ridiculous. And that's kind of where it is. But now we've turned that channel into this place where we also get creative. We have our short films that we shoot there. We do little sketches and games, and we're a family of artists, and we have an outlet, and we're just very, very grateful for that.
What about that role that Magellaf plays within your creative space these days? Like, where are you headed in your acting?
You know, I could tell you we're zeroing in on individual careers of the kids. So Magellaf is an acronym of all of our names. And so as individual artists, we are all rooting for each other and helping each other out. Now, some of our viewers on YouTube, they've seen some of our short films. My oldest son has worked on Goosebumps 2, and people have noticed, my work, and they're like, hey, we saw you in this. I think our goal is to just focus on the individual, and we'll see if someone approaches us to write for, an independent, and that's happened where we get invited to either act on an independent short or help write one or help script doctor one. Whatever opportunity presents itself, we're going to run with it, and we're going to give as much of our attention and passion toward a short indie project like we would a Netflix mega feature, whatever. Because ultimately it's just going to come down to story for us, and Magellaf is really, that's what we're about. We're about making sure that the story is saying a little bit more than just have fun, enjoy the explosions and the action. Yeah.
What difficulties did you run into for creating for YouTube?
Well, there's the technical, of course, learning what we really needed to handle some of the editing capacities that we need, figuring out editing, figuring out the best camera so that we could capture ourselves and for it to look a little bit more cinematic. We've learned from YouTubers like Casey Neistat. We know we're filmmakers, so we want to have a filmmaker feel to our vlogs so that the editing feels more like a documentary at times. We signed up for a short film contest during shutdown, lockdown days, and we spent, I think, 3 days between the 5 of us. And it wasn't until that third day that it was the 3 kids that came up with the concept, and I was like, hey, and we were all laughing out loud. So we knew this is okay. 3 days in, we figured this out, and we shot a short film. So it's a lot. It's a lot because there's 5 creative heads, and then there's the tech. We figured out the tech, but when it comes to let's brainstorm ideas, it takes us some time to find a good compromise.
How was the learning curve when it came to the advertising side of things, like getting viewers and growing an audience and, that kind of thing?
It definitely took research, a lot of research on my part with just titles and metadata and tags, knowing when to post, learning how to read the YouTube analytics so that when is our audience watching our work. I can't imagine who does that for like Netflix. Oh my gosh, it should be a team of like people, I would imagine. I've had to learn all that. Like what you say in the video matters, what you put in the tags and all that matters, and then what other videos you kind of align yourself with, all of that matters. So it's learning all of that, and then how to bring that to like your Instagram and get people to organically want to watch your stuff without you being like, hey guys, click my link, just spammy and all that. So it's like learning a new language. It's a culture. It's like this. So, and at least in YouTube, I'm still learning the Instagram culture, to be very honest with you, which I feel like has just changed. It just continues to change on me. But
especially with reels, like with reels and like the kind of the integration between that and like social media is just a crazy beast in and of itself. But creating for social media, it is always a source of curiosity for me because it's something that I haven't cracked yet, particularly for those who make it a career, for those who run a channel and have, like, for instance, I remember a couple of guys, they were being extremely transparent with their show, and it was probably, I don't know, like millions of views on their stats.
Wow.
And their earnings were only about like a couple $1,000s at most, like, so it wasn't, he's just like, yeah, for all you people who think this is such a driving force of income, like,
no, yeah,
yeah.
It takes a lot to get to a point where you're like, yeah, I make a living off my YouTube channel. You need, you've got to be in the millions as far as subscribers, I think. And then you've got to have a really good team of people. We have a manager, if you will, and we just started with them, and we're learning more from them.
Oh, interesting.
And it's kind of like a talent agent, but they do it for channels. And so it's great because now we're learning this approach that is a little bit more, it's still creative, which is extremely important, but it's also very strategic in monetization and business and making sure that our creative effort does find some sort of financial grounds. But it's a slow build. It really is,
You mentioned that the channel was, what did you say? The intersection of family, film, and faith. Yeah.
Correct. Film and family for sure. The faith part is something that it's a part of who we are. We don't shy away from it, but we certainly, that's not our niche, if you will. We're not like a Christian YouTube channel. We just happen to be a family of faith, a family that knows that we are where we are today because of a greater grace and divinity, divine intervention, if you will. And so when asked, we talk about it, but it's not like, it's not the niche of our channel per se, but it is a part of who we are. And I think it comes through. I think it's the unspoken. There's one of my favorite saints says, go out into the world and share the gospel and use words if necessary. That's kind of what our channel is. Like, we don't need to talk about it. Let's just live. How about we just live it?
Yeah.
And that's really a lot of our little catchphrases is just live in it. Just live in it. And that's also an acting thing. Yeah. Just live in this moment. Can we just connect? Let's just be kind and loving to each other and spread the light.
Several times on this podcast, we've kind of highlighted healthy boundaries and a good balance between like your work and your home, because so much about this industry can swirl around. Like, if you are not killing yourself for Hollywood, then you are not obsessed enough. And I was curious how you found that kind of intersection within your professional life.
Man, the balance act. Yeah. It's a dance, That's how I like to think about it. It's a dance, especially when we have 3 teenagers in the house. My wife and I were both artists as well and educators. And then our kids are each artists. I mean, yesterday was a day where we had 4 auditions between me and my 2 boys. So it's a whole family effort. We run lines with each other. We set up the studio, the space, we mark the lights. It's a whole family unit.
That's amazing.
Those babies were keeping us cheerful when we were staying up late writing papers. So it's a beautiful thing now to talk about having my oldest direct me while I was, trying to hit comedic notes last night at, 11:45 at night. Yeah. And then he jumps on me with editing for the YouTube channel almost all this morning. It's something that does need its pause. We do need a moment to just be family, where it's not about editing, where it's not about acting. It's not about pursuing the dream. It's how about we just live in the dream right now? The dream that we're living, which is we've got this little house. We've got a little space to call our own. We've got a little bit of time to just sit, veg out in front of the TV, or maybe we just go walk the dog. How about we just like go sit down somewhere and just enjoy the breeze? Like, I remember one time we went to the river and we just sat by the river and did nothing for all of 15 minutes, just sat there listening to the water. It's very challenging, but I love the challenge. I love it. I'm a bit of a masochist. I mean, I was the kid that I did football, track. I worked in high school and I rode my bike everywhere. So if I'm not doing something that's keeping me ultra busy, I'm probably not alive. And so I have to keep at it. I love it.
I actually heard a quote one time that said, rest is a discipline.
Yes.
It's hard.
I'm going to write that. I have never heard that.
It's hard. It really is.
You just made me exhale. Listen, that is a thing I never considered that it's something I have to like master and just be good at.
Mm.
We live in a society that teaches us go, 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 go. You got to get it. You got to get it. Hustle, hustle, hustle.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, achieve greatness. But only recently have I been listening to stuff and reading stuff and being mentored by people that say, you need to pause, just rest.
Yeah.
Catch your breath, man.
Mm-hmm.
Rest is a discipline. Yeah. People are like, we just want to get back to work,
Yeah.
Glad it's starting up again. I'll tell you what.
Yeah, for sure. Did it treat you guys all right?
You mean what now?
COVID. Like, were you guys all right?
Yeah. No. Health wise,
Yeah.
thank God we've been physically well.
Well,
We've not
not
been.
even just like professionally, because like tons of my friends, they were out of work for months.
No. I've been out of work. I've not worked since. Yeah, it's been a while. I haven't been on a set this whole time.
Yeah.
It's just harder. It's harder, and now that it's starting up, the auditions are rolling in, so that's nice.
Yeah.
I had a project that might have swung my way. We did a lot of the the first auditions before all of this kind of hit. And so it looked like it was going to be a sure thing. Then I did some tests for it and, like screen tests, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and it didn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
And I know they started to shoot that in August, but then they got hit with hurricanes on top of COVID.
Oh my gosh.
So I literally just sent prayers. I was like, man, I hope those guys get their show done. It's been hard. But there's other people that have had it even worse because they have the financial strain plus health strain.
Mm.
And I've told my family again and again, look, if we're healthy, we've got everything we need. If money comes and goes, we'll be fine. But not working takes its toll. I miss it. I miss being on sets. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
And for my friends that have been on and colleagues that have been on, they describe the atmosphere, and it's just different.
So we have some listener questions from our Insta and Facebook stories and Twitter. If you want to ask your questions to future guests, our handle on Insta and Twitter is collabing film again. So this one is, what is the most encouraging advice you've been given that has been true?
It's been uttered by a fictional character, and then I've said it to someone, but I think it didn't land until my daughter said it to me. It's that Gandalf quote. It's about what you do with the time that is given to you. On this concept of rest, and there's no time to rest. I have no time. I have to maximize my time. I have to, the hustle. For me, the Fellowship of the Ring, Lord of the Rings, all of that, it has so much significance. But it's that one moment in the film, in the Fellowship of the Ring, it just destroys me in the best way. It's just so simple. And when I apply it, when I just let myself feel this sense of peace, because I'm giving everything I've got right now, and that's all that matters, is what am I doing with this time? I'm gonna focus on loving. I'm gonna focus on creating and building and edifying people, especially my people, my family. And there's days where I forget to do that for myself. The next thing I want to point at, it wasn't until my daughter said it that I got it, because she made me realize I wasn't doing this for myself. I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't having that perspective of, I am doing enough for this time that I'm given. Dad, you're doing enough.
Yeah.
The time you've been given, you're making something of it. I think when your child tells you something that you've said before, and it lands like to the core of you, you're like, oh my gosh, I used the same words. What is going on right now? Why didn't I really fully fathom what I was saying? But sometimes it's like that. You just have to hear it from them, from the kids that watch us.
The next question was, what kind of a plan B job should an actor have, or should they?
Oh, that's a question. It's a question that's asked and thought about and milled about and debated about. Okay. So if I knew then what I know now, right? That whole thing. So I mentioned Lord of the Rings. I saw that film when I was a senior in high school in the theaters. And if by some magical way I could have known then what I know now, I would not have a plan B. I would just plan out my career study as an actor should. I'm talking, if you want to be an actor and you want to be in films and you want to make films, find out who your heroes are, what they did, where they studied, who they studied with, all that stuff, and create a track that helps you focus on that. And that means, yes, you may have to work at jobs you don't like.
Mm.
I cleaned houses. I worked at Publix Deli. I love Publix, but when I'm on the customer side, not they're great employers, but it's hard work, very hard work. You do what you need to do, right, to do the
Mm.
thing you love. And
Yeah.
if acting is the thing you love, you're just gonna have to find a way to make it work. And some people, I've had students who financially they're good now. They're in a position where they studied something else. That I have one student who's a software engineer, and if you've kind of already had your plan B set, good for you. You've got some financial grounds to do what you got to do. But plan Bs they could be finicky. They
Yeah.
can actually create a problem. It really depends on the individual. If you're the kind of person that thrives with structure and security, you probably need some sort of just consistent income.
Mm.
If you're more of the explorer spirit where, you don't necessarily worry about where you're going to get your next meal because you'll be fine with just a cup of rice,
Mm-hmm.
then maybe you definitely are the one that says, no, I'm fine. I think that's very liberating when you can say, I have a plan and it's just to focus on this thing.
Mm.
It's complicated though. It can
Yeah.
get very complicated.
As an actor, have you ever been asked to do something against your morals, and how did you handle it?
Short answer is no.
Mm.
I've not, thank God. I've auditioned for some things that I was on the fence about,
Mm.
I think that's the beauty of the audition process. You sit some time with a character. Our job is to meet these characters when we first receive the sides or the script, and we meet them like a person on the page. I'm reading it, but then when I'm on set, by the time I'm on set, I think a lot of that has been anticipated and discussed, or to some degree or the other.
Okay.
I have been very, very fortunate that I've never had to do something in the moment where I'm like, oh, this is so wrong.
Mm.
Why am I going through this? I think that comes from a pretty sound family communication structure.
Mm.
My wife is very involved in a lot of the scripts I get. I don't really get cast too often in things that are outside of who I am, which is great, like too far outside, but even when we're just reading through scripts, I'm usually prepared for what may or may not come on set. By the time an offer comes in, you and your agent should be having a lot of these discussions, especially if the role involves anything that is potentially compromising to your integrity or what you represent, right? I think those are key things to keep in mind.
Last question. What question should I have asked you?
Wow. Yeah, here's one. Why are you still doing this?
Why are you still doing this?
I ask myself all the time on the daily, and I think it's a normal thing to ask when you're an entrepreneur, not just an actor, but when you're working for yourself and you're trying to make a living for yourself. I think it makes it easier when your business is doing really good and you're just profit is just awesome. And there's people these days that are not seeing a lot of that because of the situation the world's in. But for me personally, that question, had you asked it, I would have just said Chadwick Boseman would have been my answer.
Ooh.
His passing solidified why I do this. I admired him since the first day I saw him on screen. The deep, deep sadness I have that I will never get to work with him. But his passing as an actor solidified that I do this because I needed to have a clarity that I didn't ever want to take a role that would compromise my integrity, but also my family's, my Latino culture, because there's enough of that. I think John Leguizamo was saying it in an article recently that it's so easy for us to get cast as with this negative spin, always the bad guy, always the, negative. It's just negative. It takes a lot of courage to say, well, I really don't want to get cast as that. And I want to tell different kinds of stories. And it takes a lot of faith because potentially I'm saying no to a lot of work, by the big people in charge. But then that empowers me because then I'm forcing myself to create my own stories that when my kids watch me on screen, or other kids that look like me, or they don't even have to look like me. They can see someone of my essence and realize, yeah, they're not all bad. No, we're not. There's a lot of real good,
They're Thunderbirds. They're liberators.
That's right. That's right. I think when you meet Sparks, Coldfoot is one of my native best friends. And then Gomez, that's who I play, Corporal Abel Gomez. When you meet those three and the rest of the 157, you'll see, that those are the kind of roles, those are the kind of people that need to be seen on screen. And there's a lot of good examples out there. There's more of the good now, but I don't know. It was his passing that really solidified that for me. And when I feel down and when I feel like it's just not a good day for the business, for this little business, I just remember him, because it's not about me. On my deathbed, it needs to be about the work I left behind, the legacy I left with my kids, with my wife, with the people that truly know me. And hopefully my work meant far more than just entertainment.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
It is my pleasure and honor.
If you enjoyed this interview, follow us right here and check out more episodes at media.collabinc.org. If you have comments or know someone who would be a great guest on our show, send in your suggestions to tanya@collabinc.org. Jose, thanks so much again for your time. Be well and God bless. We'll see you next time on There to Here.